Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're all doing well. I recorded a response to this, and one of the clips that I tried to merge with the other one didn't work, so I had to restart. But, user writes, why does creation, from plants to animals and mankind, fight Allah to prevent death and strive to preserve life, going against the very dictate of Allah's death mandate for creation? A lot of animals have this fitra in them, this innate sense of always trying to survive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't create creatures to just want to die, to just not try to look for food. We have impulses that drive us to reproduce, eat, go to the bathroom, sleep. We have instincts that are innate with us. And they're not defying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are not fighting against His will. Because Allah doesn't say that you have to just sit in one spot and you can't defend yourself or try to thrive and survive on this very deadly planet. When you really look at it, in order for anything to really exist on this planet, you have to keep going. We're told constantly in the Quran to strive, be steadfast. Well, if you think about how many animals, they have to strive and be steadfast, or else they're going to end up in a situation that is not favorable to them. So the lion, the tiger, the cougar, they all have these innate ways of being. And when you examine a tiger and you see why they're so ferocious, why they are so strong when it comes to not wanting to be caged, for example, you begin to see, oh, well, if they don't, then their species would pretty much go extinct. Today, we've really subdued them to a high degree, and so it's a little different than it was in the past when we had lighter weapons. But the tiger's biological and spiritual nature still remains. Different creatures have what, one could say, desires to live and how they express it. So, in this example here, you see that in order for the wolves to not die, they have to hunt. Okay? So, if they get a deer, they live to see it another day, because their bellies will be full. But if the deer is caught, well, that's it for the deer. And so, time and time again, you'll see how a deer has to do a sort of leap of faith. Isn't that weird? Jumps off the cliff, swims, has to get away. He doesn't want to die, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created it to run, to jump, to leap, the capacity to swim. Okay? So, it's not fighting against Allah's death mandate. It is fulfilling Allah's decree that each animal must strive to thrive. Creatures must eat or die. By them searching for food, they are trying to live. But also, predators and prey have a different mode of life. When you are the one who is hunted, when you are the vulnerable one, you are the prey, well, you have to fight to live, fight off death. And then, when you're the predator, well, you have to hunt and you have to be able to survive, and your behavior is going to be different. Each creature on this planet has a wonderful way of fulfilling their purpose, their duty. Allah has prescribed duties upon every creature, and us humans have our own little unique aspect as well. When you really look at the animal world, it's quite miraculous, because one minute the predator becomes the prey, and the tables are always turning, and each creature has to decide, Do I fight or do I give up? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it to where, at a certain point, you do give up. You do give in. But the strength of each creature is different. There'll be a point in the struggle for life and death when it comes to predator and prey, where the prey will succumb and give up. They are exhausted. So who gives up first, the predator or the prey? Depends. Sometimes the predator can no longer hold on to its prey. It's fighting for its life because it needs to eat. And the prey is also fighting for its life. Both are trying to prevent death. If the tiger does not eat, it will die. If the buffalo does not fight, it will die. But one must give. So this wonderful symbiotic relationship that Allah has created shows us that this planet is very complex, but both of them will eventually die, so they cannot fight Allah's will. Rather, each one is carrying out their prescribed function, duty, and purpose on this planet. They cannot fight that ingrained essence within them. The tiger will never change its stripes. Animals trying to survive doesn't mean they're fighting against Allah. That's not true. No. Because Allah has designed each creature for a specific purpose. Whether it's the dog's ability to sniff out its opponents, or a badger, a wombat, you name it, different critters, to climb and avoid being tracked and eaten. The contest is in alignment with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created each animal to do. Even when it comes to plants. I'm reading a book about trees, and trees have different genetics, and they pass on those genetics to their seeds. It's pretty interesting. But trees will grow different in the shade versus the sun. They will grow differently with heavy snowfall and light snowfall. It's really fascinating just how trees grow within different environments when they're thriving and when they're not. And how the branches at the top grow different than those at the bottom because of the light that one gets and the other light it doesn't get. The branches. And how trees compete for sunlight. So the trees are competing for sunlight. They're fulfilling their purpose. But when they die, mushrooms, bugs, different creatures will utilize them. And because the trees die, we are able to use it for firewood. So it's cyclical. We can eat a lot of the things that trees make. They have to go through that birth cycle. They bear their fruits, apples, pears, cherries, and then they stop. And winter comes and they don't produce anymore. Now there are some fir trees, Douglas fir, different pines and whatnot. We can take their needles and we can make tea, use their pine cones to create, a start for firewood, stuff like that. But overall, and also when redwood trees grow their new inches, like they're growing new bristles, they're young and soft. You can pick those off, mince them up, and add them to your food. They have a lemony citrus flavor. You can eat them as well for teas. But each unique tree has a life cycle. Some trees can live to be 500 years, whereas birch trees, which I really like them, some only live for 50 years. So each tree has a life cycle, and they are going to grow the way in which their genetics dictate and the environment around them allows. So they're fulfilling their life cycle. There will be trees in paradise, we are also told. So the trees are not going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by growing and thriving and doing their duty, bearing fruit, giving shade, providing homes for creatures. No, they're not defying anything. They're fulfilling their mandate, which is to keep going, to thrive, to live. And to refresh your mind on the question, why does creation from plants to animals and mankind fight Allah to prevent death? So creatures can't fight Allah. And Allah is capable of anything. Allah is the mighty. You cannot prevent what Allah has commanded. You can't fight Allah because Allah is not a physical thing. It's not something you can wrestle with. And Allah is going to put a trial and burden on everything in life. So, the tree has their burden of surviving the storms, surviving woodpeckers pecking holes, which deteriorates them, goats chewing off the bark, killing it, those burrowing bugs that eat the tree from the inside out. It has to survive, right? And those trees that survive a lot, they pass their seeds on. If you ever look at how redwood trees reproduce, it's pretty cool. That's how they are doing. They're striving to live, but they're not preventing death in the sense of they can tell Allah, no, I won't die today. No, that's not really how it works. The death mandate, well, we all must die, but that doesn't mean that Allah hasn't made us to have to fight to live. Winter is often thought of as a time of death because of how barren everything is. It's a time of struggle, of animals pretty much fasting when you think about it. How chilling everything is in the atmosphere around them because it's just frozen. How hard an animal has to work to hunt. So you have two energies here, the one trying to flee and the one trying to pursue, both chasing life and trying to avoid death. You have to sit back and realize that their purpose, what they were created for, the prey was created to die, to be eaten, and the predator was created to carry out that function. They thin the herds so that the herds don't overeat all the vegetation. They all have a relationship that makes Earth beautiful. One must die so that the predators can live, and if there's too many predators, well, then there'll be no food left and everything gets out of balance. So, the delicate nature of nature is miraculous. And none of it fights against Allah, whether it fulfills it. Allah has given tools to each creature to try to make them live. The water buffalo has its horns, its hooves, the ability to stomp and fight. But the lion also has been given their tools. Their pack unity, their thick claws, their strong jaws, the design of their teeth. Each one has to sit there and think to itself, how do I live another day? You could look at the word prevent in a very symbolic way. How long can I keep going? And the engine inside of them, essentially, that spiritual engine that makes them go on, carry on when all seems lost. When a drought hits, they keep searching for water. They don't want to die. They keep fighting even when they're surrounded, but also the predator, no matter how hard the buffalo fights, knows if we don't eat, the cubs will starve. We have to eat. We must fight. So this contest of wills is fulfilling Allah's mandate. None of them can prevent when death arrives. Many lions get injured when they fight a buffalo. And that's it for them. No veterinarians coming and taking the lion and healing them. The pride is not going to bring them a bunch of meat all the time. Lots of lions, once they're injured, are eaten by hyenas. So that sort of raw reality is brutal to think about. But none of them can resist Allah's decree upon them. Allah created, the different creatures to jump, leap high. Their legs are long, their bodies are light, and they are jumping to avoid death. They want to live, but they are weak once caught. They can't resist the strength of the predators. especially not when the jaw locks on. And eventually they stop and they accept that their death is there and their body literally gives up. And then, once they stop wiggling, they're done. They're eaten. Hyenas, though, will start to eat an animal when it's still alive. Some predators, they really do wait to eat until the creature stops moving because they grab it by the jugular. Everything works in according to Allah's will. Whether it's one creature's time to go or another's time to be born, it's all within the capacity and control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as the sharks, they want to eat, they're fighting. One gets speared, the elephant struggling to survive. If animals didn't try to survive and live, as Allah has demanded they do so, Earth would be as desolate as Mars. But if things didn't die and predators didn't win, everything would kind of be more bleak. Because things would be overeaten. Things would not have been allowed to thrive. Too many predators, not enough prey, they cannibalize and eat each other. Kind of a disaster. When there are no predators and there's a bunch of prey, vegetation suffers. So, when we think about this wonderful system that we live on, we can see the beauty in the struggle for life and the walking into the acceptance of death. Animals have their own way of accepting death, and you have to look at each creature when it hits its old age, when it's been captured by a predator. You'll notice the different dispositions each animal possesses. Other animals, in order to live, they must hide and stalk their prey, not be seen. Other animals, they hide to not be eaten. So, the function has a duality, doesn't it? Hide to live has the twofold expression. Hide so you may hunt and eat and live, or hide so you may not be eaten and live. They're defying sight, but they are still seen by the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they can't ever defy Allah. Allah has allowed each creature to have its unique fitra, its unique disposition. What makes one animal want to win over the other is an instinct and an impulse within them. That's what's beautiful about it. And sometimes the reptile wins, or the feline wins. And the whole mystery of how that is carried out is quite telling, because we don't really know. We can only observe. There's odds where you're like, how did that creature win? And other times where you're like, I'm not surprised that creature won. Animals have this wonderful strength to persevere. And we, as humans, have mental illnesses such as depression that make us give up. But we are very unique. But so are the other creatures in how they deal with hardships. See, the fact that us humans and other creatures keep going through hardships, it's not that we're defying Allah. It's not like we're looking at death and saying, not today. But some would argue that others say, not today, Satan. As in, the shaitan is trying to make their life difficult. It's not that Allah is incapable of stopping a human from fighting to keep going on, right? So, when you're fighting to keep going, you're fighting, you could argue, shaitan's joy of you possibly failing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free of need. We need Allah. Allah is not, we cannot cause Allah pain. We cannot diminish the power of Allah. So our resistance to Allah is not even possible. But we can resist shaitan. And shaitan can't do anything to us unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits it. And the trials and tribulations that we face are going to be proportionate to us. But also, we're not always guaranteed to win. We're not here to always win. Some people's failures will be other people's lessons. How knowledge is passed down helps others to strive and survive. To avoid death, you could argue for a little bit, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make you die in a way you did not expect. And shaitan will come from your left, your right, above you, below you, from an angle you did not expect. So you can never really prepare too much. And you'll never outwit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're not exactly preventing death. It's not like you can go somewhere and then Allah can't find you to collect your soul, right? The angel of death will come and take our souls, and there's nothing we can do about it. There is that hadith where Moses punched an angel, but it was Allah in the end who gave Moses a choice. I believe it was Moses, or was it Abraham? Oh no. Forgive me if I got it wrong. Now I'm blanking. I have a cold, so my brain's a little bit foggy. But it was one of the prophets who punched an angel, and Allah gave him the choice. And he ended up going back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, choosing to die. So, right there we're told, it's Allah who decides when you die. He gave that one prophet a choice. That don't mean He's going to give you the same choice. And if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. Death is mandated upon all of us. Life cycles even exist for mountains. They get torn apart by humans. Erosion from weather takes them down. Certain roots of plants can actually slowly erode and cover the mountain's little spots, and how do you put it? Like the dirt goes on it, it erodes. Geology has a good way of explaining how land masses change. And then orogeny is like how mountains are created. You think of the plate tectonics underneath, when they smush together and new mountains are formed, or volcano erupts, earthquakes shake things up. It's fascinating how landscapes change. Some trees have fire-resistant bark to a certain degree, others don't. So, when you think about how everything in this planet is survive or die, you recognize the fact that they're not fighting against Allah. Everything has its time, but it also has a duty to keep going. The fish is taken out of the water, it flops and flops for as long as it can. If the fish didn't flop, it might be a poisoned, sickly fish and you shouldn't eat it. There's a lesson in that. A true great lesson. When you get a fish on the end of the hook, it struggles real hard. Like, what is this? It wants to get free. If it didn't fight, it wouldn't be able to go on and live another day and reproduce. We'd have a lot less fish if every fish just gave up. But at a certain point, resistance is futile, and it'll be a lot easier for you if you just give in. After a person has been tortured for a certain amount of time, the body gives up its sense of feeling, and that actually makes it easier on the person. Same thing with trauma. After a certain amount of trauma, the mind has a way of protecting itself. It's really fascinating when you look at this in a holistic way. So everything acts in accordance to Allah's will, design, their individual destiny, their fitra, their impulses, their biological needs and urges, the environment around them that will dictate and extract a certain psychological response from them. The way an animal behaves in one environment will be different than the way the animal behaves in another environment. And the beauty and mystery of why each creature behaves the way it does, depending on where it is and where it's at and what has happened to it, is still something to unfold in the libraries of time. We have a lot to learn, But no creature can resist Allah. No creature can resist Allah. And Allah never told any creature that we have known that you should just give up, just sit there, and just let yourself be eaten. No. No. There are peculiar creatures like an oyster, but an oyster even has a defense mechanism, its shell, right? But inside it's all goobly, can't really run away. Turtle, slow, but it's got its shell. Sloths are weird creatures, they're super slow, but they have cuteness, so maybe there's a human that feels for them. So, a jellyfish, oh, I could just punch that jellyfish. They're so soft and gloobly. But they could sting you, you know? They drift about, and yet they can sting you up real bad. Octopus, in the water, they can cause you a lot of problems. On land, not so much. They have a great way of escaping, too, if you ever watched how octopuses can squeeze through tiny holes and whatnot. Even a mouse, they sure are small, but they'll eat up your food and they spread disease. So, it's amazing how each creature has such a dynamic nature to it. How each creature can spread death, and then how each one strives to live, but also when that creature eventually gives up and accepts its fate. It stops wiggling, stops fighting, and succumbs. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be resisted. And a tree at a certain point won't grow to a certain height. Not enough nutrients in the soil, not enough space for the roots to grow. There's lots of experiments for growing different plants in different sized containers. You know, the relationship of the roots is very important. There's a whole way you can go at this, from the animal world, from just raw landscape, from the root system of plants, from human psychology, you name it. So, nothing can resist Allah. Everything honors Allah, I'd argue, and worships Allah in their own way. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and join the blog.